This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, episode 61.
I generated, it was G code that was 500,000 to over 750,000 lines of code for each operation. So yeah, it took 4 months to make, and the pictures of how I did it are up online, but it was a really cool project to make.
This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, a show which answers one question from you, the listener, about CNC router tables, CNC software, hardware, web hosting, and business. I'll help you get started in your CNC hobby or business and help you cut through the confusion.
Today's episode is sponsored by themakersguide.com. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Griggs, and I'm so glad that you took the time to listen in today to our podcast where we discuss everything CNC related that you're having a problem with your CNC router tables or the business that you're building with it or just the hobby and fun that you're doing. Today is a special day for me because I get to share with you one of the many friendships that I have made through my exposure with the CNC Router Tips group on Facebook. Hashtag CNC Router Tips. Just look it up on Facebook. About a year ago, I was fortunate enough to go on a trip to Orlando, Florida with my wife. She had a conference going, and the kids and I came along. One of the things that I wanted to do was to reach out and see who in the area was into CNC that was in the group and was willing to come and meet with me. And so I put out a call, and my guest answered. I'd like you all to meet Mike Gencarelli. Mike has been a member of the group for quite a while, and I'd like, I think you're going to enjoy getting a chance to get to know him. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing great, Bill. Thank you. And thank you for that introduction. That was really good. I liked it.
Well, you're welcome. It was very, very cool the way that we met. We met with one other individual. We went to Splitsville, which is in, what is it called now? Disney Springs?
Disney Springs. Yeah, exactly. One of my favorite places.
Yeah, downtown Disney. Anyway, it was a fantastic trip. We went and had some pizzas and bowled some games. You and I badly, and
yes, very badly,
and our host very well. So it was still a lot of fun for us. Probably not quite as much fun for him because of the lousy bowling partners, but we had a great conversation.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. So, how did you get started? How did you find out about CNC Router Tips Group?
Oh boy, it was. I guess I've been on Facebook for a while. It had only been to see pictures of my grandchildren, right? Mm-hmm. And then I was looking for an answer to something, and I started searching on Facebook, and bam, CNC Router Tips came up, and then I joined. I was, I was very happy to join because it's a group where I can get a lot of information, and so I pretty much visit it every day and read through all the comments and questions and people's projects and things that they got going on. So that's how I found it, and I'm happy that I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has really been a blessing to me to have this group. It's very rare. This is a very niche thing that we do, CNC router tables. And, there's not a whole lot of people, you would think, out there to do it. But to be able to find a concentration of them and to be able to share, the joy and the frustrations involved with...
We should turn that around, Bill, the frustrations and the joy in that order.
But yeah, it's just really cool to be able to do that. And so I'm very happy that, we got the chance to meet. What is your background? Where did you start in machining? Was that something that you just picked up as a child, or is it? Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah. Well, basically, I was always, making something, a go-kart or whatever, bicycle. But machining, I started, to keep this story short, in high school. I started in my second year of high school, and I took what they called automotive machine shop. Even though it had nothing to do with automotive, it was just machine shop. And I took that for 3 years. Then I got out, and I wanted to be an auto mechanic. That's why I took, quote, automotive machine shop. Then I went to the General Motors School of Product Service in Tarrytown and became a factory-trained and certified mechanic. So had nothing to do with machining, but that was around 1978 when the auto industry went into the toilet because of the gas shortage and, big American manufacturers trying to make small cars. And the place that I started at closed. So I said, well, I guess auto mechanics at the time wasn't a good career. I went to machine shop and started an apprenticeship and kind of went from there. So that's the short story. I can get you all the way through to today, but I'll let you.
We love this kind of stuff. So what was an apprenticeship like? I know that this was common a few years ago, but not so much anymore.
Yeah, it's honestly, Bill, it's terrible. And I hate to, I don't want to sound political because I'm not, but it's terrible that we don't make anything anymore.
Yeah. Because
the gentleman who taught me how to be a machinist, I'm 1/10 the machinist they are or were. And they did this for 30 or 40 years. And they knew how to teach you. First of all, they could make absolutely anything, an engine, a machine, anything. And they just had skills, and they would tell you when they learned to file, they worked on filing for a year as part of their apprenticeship. So apprenticeship, I guess, was the best thing that ever happened to me. I did several. I did a tool maker's apprenticeship. I did a mold maker's apprenticeship. And I can't tell you, the people who taught me were like a god. They were unbelievable. Very hard, very hard on you because they wanted you to take it seriously. But I wish that we had that today. That people could go and get through a real apprenticeship.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of the things that I see a lot in, I'm a member of several machinist groups and, makers groups on Facebook and other places. And the professionals, the folks who do machining and manufacturing for a living are always lamenting the fact that there are no longer any apprenticeships out there. And that the new guys who come in don't know enough and don't have an opportunity to learn enough to, replace them because many of them are getting ready to retire or have retired and come back to start working. Yeah.
I just read an article about Boeing, and Boeing is behind on their manufacturing. So what they're doing is, since they have no pool of new talent to tap from, they're bringing their retirees back from retirement to help.
Okay. And let's pause for a second.
Yeah.
Again.
I was talking about Boeing. I had just read an article about Boeing because they're behind on production. They don't have a pool of talent to go to, so that they're bringing back retirees to help get them out of this production shortage that they have. But that's a short-term problem, because what happens when those retirees are not around anymore? You lost that talent forever. So you and I were talking before we started recording, and I've been mentoring a young man. I call him a kid, but he's 33. And I met him when I was teaching at a technical college. I was teaching welding and blueprint reading. And when he got through to the point where they said he needed to go for an apprenticeship, of course, there aren't any. So I offered to do if the school was willing to insure him, I offered to do the apprenticeship for him. And so I set up my shop in a way that I could teach him production and some other things, and did an apprenticeship with him for about 3.5 or 4 years, so that he could get some real training on, maybe not as good as the guys who taught me, but as best as I could to try to pass that skill on. And now he has a very, very desirable skill. He can get a job in a week, and he has, because he can do what most people can't, make stuff.
Yeah, that is an amazing skill set to have, and to have the ability to work with somebody who is able to teach you those things. And I got lucky, frankly, back when things happened. I had built my own CNC router table in the garage, with MDF sides and aluminum stuff and that sort of thing. And a neighbor happened to mention it to his old college roommate. Mm-hmm. And the college roommate was one of the professors in a mechanical engineering technology class at the local state college. And they got excited and they wanted to come over and see, what I had done because they wanted to do a similar project with their kids. And so, fast forward, I ended up helping them with that project, throughout the semester. It was a great time. And they taught me machining. What a fantastic thing. I get to hang out in the shop, and while the kids were working on something, I'd be working on it too. I learned how to use the Bridgeport and the Haas VMC and, just on and on. So many different varied skills that I picked up just from, having made something and, them hearing about it. So, you can't discount the human touch in this thing.
No, not at all. And in fact, you talk about, how rewarding this is. Okay, so there I was being a machinist supporting my family. Unfortunately, as that industry started to wane, I saw the writing on the wall, and I said I better get into something else because I had a wife and 2 kids and so on. And I progressed from that. I'll keep it short. Mm-hmm. Progressed from apprentice machinist, tool maker, and an apprentice mold maker. I got into what they called an assistant tooling engineer position for Gulf and Western manufacturing. Mm-hmm. And basically what I was a gopher for the tooling engineer. Whatever he needed, I did. But they called me an assistant tooling engineer, which got me out of the shop and into the office. Mm-hmm. And I learned a lot and progressed through that and followed that into manufacturing engineering and so on. But in my most of my career, then I progressed into software development, and I know we're going to talk about that later. But as I retired, what I really wanted to do was get back to making stuff, put the shop in my garage, get my machines together, get my triple edge finder, and start making stuff.
Shameless plug.
I'm sorry, but I use that thing all the time. Yeah. So there's no, it's invaluable. If I could tell you how much, if I could take back all the cursing I did trying to pick up where I left off before I had the triple edge finder. But again, it's not a shameless plug. It's real. But anyway.
Excellent. Yeah. So you did a lot with automation as well.
Yes, yeah. I went from, and like I said, I'll keep the story short. So I was the last thing I did was where I was in the shop was I was a mold maker, and they had gotten some German robotics to load and unload the molding machines so that they could run 24 hours a day. On some of the machines. They couldn't use them on all of them. Mm-hmm. So I went from a mold maker to actually making and designing and making parts for robotics, grippers and fingers and things to load and unload the machine. I got to get involved in the control mechanisms, which were very rudimentary then. Mm-hmm. It was all, programmable logic controllers and things like that, no computers. Skip a job, I wound up getting into a place that had been in business since 1926 that was pretty archaic, but they made aircraft safety equipment for, parachute kind of stuff and pilot safety. And the owner who bought the company wanted to get heavily into automation. So he sent me to a pneumatics class. And then I started designing and building my own automation, some pretty crazy stuff, like not to go on and on, but one of the things I built, as you're familiar with a sewing machine locks 2 continuous pieces of thread together. Mm-hmm. But when you sew for a parachute harness, it has to be a continuous, like you do sew it by hand. So I actually built a robot that would mimic a hand sewing operation through a 1-inch piece thick of webbing that they use for parachutes. So anyway, pretty involved stuff. That's
fascinating. I find this sort of thing very cool because you never know what experience somebody has had that you may be stumbling trying to come up with a solution to a problem, and because you haven't talked to someone about what they've done in the past, you have no idea that they did that for a living, 30 years ago. And, they've forgotten more than you'll ever remember, ever know about it. So, yeah.
Yeah. In this case, the automation that I built was basically, I built it. In other words, I built everything from the frame, the controls, the grippers, the mechanisms, the tables, everything. And wired it, and I'd go up into the machine shop, make all the parts, come down, assemble it, do all the wiring, did all the programming, did all the pneumatics. Mm-hmm. So I did a bunch of machines like that, a whole laundry list. I went from there into, this is a funny story, so again, I want to keep it short, but I went from there into a place that made ejection seats, computer-controlled ejection seats. Mm-hmm. And on my first day, they said to me, okay, here's the computer. You have to do an operation sheet. If you have a problem, call Brian. Okay? Mm-hmm. I had never seen a computer before this day, Bill. Never. So I pick up the phone, which I knew how to use, and I called Brian. Brian came over, and what I had in front of me was an IBM AT with about 384K of memory, a monochrome Hercules graphics card, and 2 floppy drives. No such thing as a hard drive.
Yeah.
And Brian comes over and says, all right, turn on the computer and go into WordStar. So I start reaching my hands around the side of the computer, tapping it like I'm searching for weapons. And he goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm trying to figure out how to turn it on. So that prompted me after that day that I better learn computers. So I taught myself computers. Then I got into computer-controlled automation, then robotics and automation, and then software development. So that's the short version of how I went from machinist. That's about as short as I can make it, Bill. I'm sorry. It's a long story.
I feel your pain. Computers are one of those things. Back in the day, I worked for New York State, and we had a bunch of troopers who had never seen a computer. Mm. And it was one of my assignments was to teach them how to turn it on, how to access the programs that they needed, how to print something out and everything. And the number of people at this time frame, and we're talking probably somewhere in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. In fact, I know it had to be close to that because we hadn't, we were hoping to get the new operating system that had just come out, Windows 95. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so having them go through those experiences, you just can't take it for granted that everybody knows how to do something. Today, a 5-year-old can go and turn on the computer and surf for things, and a baby is using an iPad. But back in the day, that was a big deal.
It was. When I'm to give it some reference, I'm talking about, I think it's 1982 or 83. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong. And this is MS-DOS 2 point something. Yeah. So there's no Windows. There's no. Yep. It was WordStar. And I don't even think it was Excel. It was called something else, but it was like Excel. It was a spreadsheet.
Probably Quattro Pro.
Yeah, it could have been. It was archaic, and they used a VCR to back up the computer system. It was crazy. Yeah,
back in the in fact, one of our members in the CNC Router Tips group actually was behind writing Quattro Pro.
Oh boy!
Yeah.
Wow.
So we'll have to talk about him some other time. He's already been a guest on this show, but so you got to that point. We don't want to tune everybody out here, but you got to this point, and when I met you, you had just begun setting up your shop in your garage, and you have a website now that gives people a glimpse of that. It's mygarageshop.com, is that it?
Yes, mygarageshop.com. Yeah, it was actually, when I met you, I was doing my third shop because I had just moved. I did one 15 years ago, which was basically Bridgeport lathe, plasma cutter, welder, and some other stuff, in a really small 10 by 13 in New York, where it was cold most of the time, it seemed like.
I can verify that, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I moved to Florida, I just moved all of that and didn't really change much because I didn't know what I wanted to do with the shop. I built the shop to actually build a device called a Towbot. So if people wonder what a Towbot is, you can go to www.towbot.com. It's something that I designed and got a patent for, but I don't want to bore people with it. So, so when I moved to Florida, I was getting ready to retire, and I figured, okay, I'll keep the shop the way it is. I'll try to learn what I really want to do. And then when I met you, I was moving to my final home. I'm never going to move from here again. And I was building the shop that I always wanted. So I sold the equipment that I had and started fresh. So.
I'm afraid to hit the audio button or the video button on your website, towbot.com, but it looks like something that you tow behind a jet ski.
Yes, yeah. It basically what it is if anybody who's had a boat, I had a boat, I had a jet ski. This is when I was getting ready to retire. I thought that was going to be in New York, and we used to go out on the weekends. And where I was a very crowded area, so you had to have somebody ride the jet ski behind you in a very crowded marine area, going pretty fast, and most people were afraid to do it. They didn't mind in an isolated area, but where all the traffic was, they didn't want to do it. So we had to tow the jet ski really slow behind the boat, because what happens, the rooster tail from the boat will actually swamp the ski and sink it. So I designed this thing that would keep the ski really close within 6 feet of the boat so you could navigate bridges and other things. But when you hit the gas, it would stretch out 55 feet and keep the ski in tow. And then it used these very large nitrogen gas shocks. So when you took the gas off the boat, the jet ski wouldn't come rocketing toward the back of the boat at 30 or 40 miles an hour. That's but
very cool. You are just so versatile. I encourage everybody who's listening to the show right now to take a moment when this podcast is done. I'll put links to towbot.com and to my garage shop, mygaragesshop.com in the show notes, and you can check out some of some pictures of some of the things that Mike's been working on. Let's talk about your current shop for a minute. You've got a CNC router table, which is obviously something that you would have inside of this group, but with a twist.
Yes. Yeah. What I did was my first machine was a plasma cutter that I tried to do routing on. That didn't work out. It just wasn't rigid enough. So when I got this shop, I said, what I really want to do is I want to get a heavy duty kind of routing machine, and hopefully I can easily, and we'll ignore that word easily, turn it into a plasma cutter. It should be easy, but it's not. And what I did for my first table was, because I don't have water or a drain, was I put what they put on a very high-end plasma machine. It was a dual chamber water table. And there's some stuff about that on the My Garage Shop site, so I'll keep that short. But I started with a Velox router because it was ready to go. I could buy it. I could start using it right away. And I was very happy with that decision. The price was right. Support was good. And the machine has really been good to me. It's only when I decided to tear it apart, make the Z-axis quick change, put the dual chamber water table under the slat table, and then remove the slat table and put a removable vacuum table on top of that. There's some pictures of all this on, I believe, on my website. If not, I'll be happy to post them. But yeah, it's basically so I can route, I can plasma cut, and I can engrave on a 3x3. That's all I got the room for. Machine. But it's been working out pretty well. I got, some support equipment, the plasma cutter, the welder, a bench grinder. I've got a nice blast cabinet, got a small lathe, and now I'm trying to get rid of the drill press I have and get a smaller milling machine.
So I want to just clarify something here, Mike.
Sure.
You combined a Velex CNC router and a Torchmate plasma table into one unit.
Well, what I did was I took what I learned from having the Torchmate, and the difference is I had to make the Z-axis removable. So that's pretty simple. Going back to my tooling, my toolmaker days, we put 2 locating pins and just 4 screws to hold the Z-axis on. Did one big quick disconnect for all the wires, a 15-pin connector, and then a twist connector for the motor. So now you can pull the head off and disconnect the wires really easily. Mm-hmm. Did the same now for the plasma head. Just pop the plasma head on, or the router head. When I put the plasma head on, I actually combined 2 Z-axes. I have one at 90 degrees to the other, and instead of having a stepper motor, that has an air cylinder. So I have an air cylinder with a hand engraver mounted in it, so I can CNC engrave just like you would hand engrave, but I'm not skilled enough to do it. So I can engrave the parts like you would for like stuff you might see on a low rider in California where they have engraved parts. I do that kind of stuff. And then plasma cut it all out. And then to make it a real plasma cutter and keep all the dust and grime that was just horrible with the Torchmate, I did the dual chamber water table so I can raise and lower the water level really quickly when I'm plasma cutting.
Yeah, and there's a video on YouTube, I believe that you posted, showing the water table right after you completed it, because you were working on that when I was down in Florida. I think you had just begun it, or you were just partway through it.
Yeah.
So,
I was actually just doing the dual chamber water table for the V-Locks. I had the Torchmate version, which is what the video is on. That's on my YouTube channel, my Garage Shop channel, I believe it is. Even I don't go there that much, but yeah. But it shows the whole dual chamber water table, and then I haven't actually shot one for the.
You've done some incredible projects in this shop, and again, I encourage everybody to take a peek online. Look at the pictures of your shop, everything. One project that stuck out in my mind was the Incredible Hulk 3D carving that you did.
Yeah, the Incredible Hulk project was kind of funny because I did that for my doctor, and when he was interviewing me for the first time when I went to see him, he asked me, do I exercise? Do I do this? Do I do that? And when I told him I make stuff in my garage, he asked me more questions about it. I'm like, what does that have to do with my health? And the reason is he wanted to find somebody who could take and make a full-size 3D replica of the Hulk with his face blended into it as the Hulk. So he wanted to be the Hulk, and he wanted a statue of it, but he wanted it to be subtle. He was going to put it on the wall in the gym at the hospital, and people know he's a Hulk fan, but when they look at it, go, "Geez, that looks like you," So I did do that, and it is up on the My Garage Shop site under 3D sculptures. And basically, what I did was I measured his head, so that when they ask him if it's him, he could take his glasses off, which he wears all the time, and put them on the face of the Hulk statue, and then it would look exactly like him. But that was a pretty interesting project. That was a router project and a plasma project. So basically, we did a 3D. We bought a 3D model of the Hulk online to save some time. We did his face. Did a rotary picture of his face going all the way around, and then blended that into the 3D model, and then added the Hulk's hair, the Hulk's teeth, the Hulk's nose, and the Hulk's forehead to make him look like the Hulk, and then turned that into an STL file. I used a Bobcat to take the STL file, get it ready for cutting. and generated, it was G code that was 500,000 to over 750,000 lines of code for each operation. So yeah, it took 4 months to make, and the pictures of how I did it are up online. But it was a really cool project to make, really cool.
Now you did slicing as well in that.
Yeah, I didn't have a fourth axis at the time, and it was too big to do on a fourth axis, and my machine is too small. So I made it out of about 28 pieces. The hands are made out of several pieces. The head is made out of several pieces. And if you look at the pictures, you'll see there's some pretty rough parting lines where the pieces all met up. So I had to basically hand sculpt and hand finish to blend everything together into the finished product. But the finished product came out really well. And if anybody's doing something similar, once you do all that, you kind of lose the texture in the skin that gets cut with the CNC. So I used some sand paint to put texture back on the skin, except where I didn't want it on the eyes and the teeth. And so it looks like real skin, it's got that, there's a good little tip there.
Oh, I didn't realize that the material that you used to do all these layers was MDF.
Yeah, I basically, if you look at in the pictures, you see this big stack of wood. I basically took MDF, and for the torso, I cut it into 36 by 36. I stacked it up. It was 8, 9, 10, or 11 layers deep. I glued it together by putting a lot of glue on both sides and adding as much weight as I could find in my garage, anvils, tables, and everything. And I lift them up with my hoist and put them on top of the layers so it would dry with all that weight on it. And I'd make a big slab of MDF and then carve it. When this thing was done, it was about 300 pounds finished. So the rough parts were more.
Amazing, just amazing. Yeah, I would have probably used blue insulation foam, but you might not be able to get that in Florida because you don't need it. Yeah.
I probably could have, but this was my first 3D sculpture, and I had sculpted in acrylic, but not 3D, kind of a 2D to 3D, kind of thing. If you go to the website, you'll see some stuff like 3D steel art, and you'll see some of the stuff I did by stacking layers and, in the finished product, but not carving it. So I figured MDF would come out with the finish that I wanted. I'm not a big wood guy. I'm more of a metal guy. But when I carved it, when I did the initial carving tests on the face, which is how I started, it came out really well. And so I just used it. It was good. I gotta say.
Fantastic. Great work, folks. You got to check out the Hulk. It's impressive. That's all I got to say about it. We could go on all day, but when you showed up at Splitsville and to meet me in Orlando, one of the things that you did that really got my attention was you brought your laptop with you.
Yeah.
Here we are, three guys checking it out, and on your laptop, you showed me a program that you had been working on to make your life easier.
Today's episode is sponsored by The Maker's Guide, creator of the Triple Edge Finder. Get the edge you need, save time and frustration on your CNC project, and make setup a snap. Save time and material. Set up your workpiece on your CNC router table faster than ever. Accurately set your Z-axis height first time, every time. Automatically locate the corner or edge of a workpiece. Reset your starting point in the middle of a program. Quality crafted right here in the USA on US-made CNC machines. Get the edge you need today. Go to www.themakersguide.com/edge. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
On your laptop, you showed me a program that you had been working on to make your life easier in Mach 3 and to give it some functionality that it didn't have. And it was the first example, I guess maybe the first public showing of smart screens outside anybody. And you seemed really surprised when I said, "This is fantastic. What are you doing? You got to make this available." But it really was that impressive, even at that early stage. Could you talk a little bit about SmartScreen and tell us what that is and what it does?
Yeah, sure. Like I said, later in my career, I did almost 28 years of software development. So I've done a lot of user interface design, a lot of automation control software for years and years. And when I started using Mach 3, I almost, I couldn't believe the layout. I couldn't believe how it let you do things like, case in point, when I was making the Hulk, I clicked on a button when I wasn't supposed to, and the router went clear across the chest and gouged a big, chunk out of it. And I was like, wow, just I was very disappointed. Mach 3 ran the machine well, but did everything else, in my opinion, poorly, at least for me. So I said, I'm going to use my software development skills to create something that's going to work easier for me. So I started laying out the screen, adding some buttons and doing some other things, and it turned into a complete redesign. I actually engaged my graphic artist, who I worked with for many years, to help me create the interface. I worked really hard on making just the whole thing better and making it just easier to use. Biggest thing was consistency. So if you're running a router, a plasma cutter, an engraver like me, whatever it is, that the interface is the same, exact from screen to screen to screen, or at least as much as it could be. And I've added, I guess the biggest thing is I've added and I guess people don't really understand it, because when I hear them talk to me about it, I think it's a little new, but I use a lot of the smart home automation, which are wireless Wi-Fi based relays that you can plug in around your shop. And I use them to control my dust collector or my plasma cutter or my compressor or whatever I want to control. And the reason I do that is because I have such long cycle times. I need to be able to have, when the machine is done, have it turn off all the ancillary equipment. What I used to do was sit in my bed and at 3 o'clock in the morning when the machine would kick off, I'd go in and with the smart device and turn off everything. Well, I wrote an interface into the smart home devices, and now I'm able to control them also. And then when I first met you, I was talking to you about the Triple Edge Finder, and I had been struggling and cursing and doing all kinds of stuff. Every time something happened and I lost my position, I'd have to start over again. So I got a Triple Edge Finder from you, and I was hooked. Hence my shameless plug before. But
for those who don't know what a Triple Edge Finder is, it is a device that allows you to locate the X, Y, and Z zero of a part, and a few other things in addition to that. But if you lose the power, you can go back and start again and pick up where you left off. So, anyway.
Yeah, and in my case, like now, even I'm using it on my fourth axis because I seem to keep, since I'm new to fourth axis, I'm probably doing stuff wrong. I have to keep restarting back at the original position, sometimes with different types of cutters, and I use the Triple Edge Finder to help me do that. So again, the programming in me, I spoke with you and I said, I watched your video on how the Triple Edge Finder worked, and I wrote an automated probing routine for the Triple Edge Finder so that you could basically stick it up on the machine, hit a button, go through a couple of actions, and it would find everything all by itself. That just goes back to my, my robotics days, which I only quickly touched on, but I just felt I needed that for myself, and so I made it available as part of the SmartScreen system also, which after talking with Bill, I have, I offer online for sale. So, but that's not the purpose of the video, of this podcast. So, anyway,
the cool part about the SmartScreens that you've developed is that you've added so many functionalities that no one ever envisioned or thought about. I mean, I certainly didn't when I, came up with the Triple Edge Finder, but it really, it's not just the Triple Edge Finder that it affects. It's the way that Mach 3 works with your setup, and it makes it so much more customizable to a lot of different things. It's using the same Mach 3 engine to drive everything, but turning off and on relays, things like that, that was like dark science to most people before. And this kind of makes it easy. You set it up this way and here it goes. So, it's the stuff that was there in Mach 3, but this is stuff that wasn't there.
Yes. The whole smart screen system, I'll get technical for a second, rather than try to write all this code in Mach 3, which is older and may go away someday, I wrote everything separately as what I call the smart screen utility. And then, and I'm going to get technical for a second, I use what's called the COM interface to talk back and forth between Mach 3 and my program, so I don't have to be restricted by the limits of Mach 3. Whatever I want to do, I can do. Whatever I want to write, I can write. And I just talk back and forth with Mach 3 to be able to make it seem like it's Mach 3 that's actually doing it, but it's not. And I wanted to control relays. Now, after I got more familiar with it, how you can turn stuff on and off as I read, I see people struggling with it. So I found a set of relays that just plug into the Ethernet port. They give me 8 relays, a temperature sensor, which I need because my machine is in a small room and typically runs about 110 to 115 degrees in that room. So I needed to be able to read the temperature. And then I had the smart Wi-Fi where I have stuff that's too far away to wire, so I wanted to use Wi-Fi-based relays. And the biggest comment I get back is, well, Wi-Fi is not reliable, it's not safe. If you think that in this case you haven't tried what I've done and you don't, it's not to turn the machine on and off. It's to turn the machine support systems on and off. So it really works really well. And I think it extends Mach 3. And I have, I want to say I have no immediate plans for Mach 4, although I already have begun to develop Mach 4. I'm going to be pretty comfortable with Mach 3 for a while, and I'm going to be working with that. But eventually, I know I'm going to port this all over to Mach 4, and so I'll be carrying that forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right, fantastic. Now, where can folks find smart screens?
Okay, well, on the My Garage Shop site, there's a menu item that says software that actually brings you over to my software development company, the one where I made my living for most of my life. That's a little bit harder to spell, but that's Ngenius, and it's spelled N and then gene, like gene splicing, Geneys, Ngenius, and not that I'm ingenious or anything, but I used to have this old mechanical book. It was called Ingenious Mechanisms. So when I created my software company, I wanted it to be ingenious somehow, and I couldn't get a website with that. So my wife came up with this spelling. But either way, you can get it. Go to My Garage Shop and go under software, and it'll bring you there. Or you can go to ingenious.com, and you'll see under products, smart screens are there.
Okay, and spell that one last time for our listeners.
Sure. Yeah, it's like I said, the easy way is go to mygarageshop.com, but if you want to go directly to the site, it's Ngeniys.com. Ngenius.
Okay. One last question that might help clarify some things in Smart Screen, at least in my mind. You offer 3 versions of it. You offer a hobby version, a free version, and a industrial version. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's actually, there's the free version, which is a fully functional industrial version, and it works without limitation for 60 days. So it's not a short trial. I'm not doing this to make money. I did this for me, and I used the proceeds from it to help pay for my hobby and to improve the product. Honestly, I'm not looking to get rich on this. I want people to use it. So there's the free version. You can try it. If you like it, you can buy it. The hobby version runs on Windows XP because I did a poll on your Facebook group and found that 56% of the people are using Windows XP. So I had to strip down some of the functionality for Windows XP, but otherwise it's pretty fully functional from that point of view. Whatever I could get to run on XP, I did. The next version up has pretty much all the features as far as the relays go, so you can get that extension. from it. And then the industrial version just involves security and some other things that you might not need unless you're doing an industrial. But I use the industrial version because I like the flexibility it gives me, and the difference in price I think is nominal. So if you're going to buy it, not that because I charge more money, try the industrial version, which is what you get for free. And if you like that, then you can buy it. If not, the other versions are there to make it cheaper for you.
Okay, and they're not expensive anyway. I mean,
no, it's $10, $20, or $30, and then the free version.
Yep. So there you go. Just fascinating work, Mike. I mean, we could go on and on and on, but I'd love to hear what's next for you.
What's next for me? Well, right now I've been trying to get my fourth axis up to the same level as the rest of my machine. I did something a little different because with and I'll always try to keep this short, but with my router, I had about 2.5 inches between the slat table and the router head, and that's all the part that I could put in there, about 2.5 inches. Since my dual chamber water table is under the slat table, I actually lowered my fourth axis into the water table, not when the water's in it, and now I can swing a 12-inch piece in there. And I extended the travel on the Z-axis. So I can do some big 3D 4-axis routing stuff. And I'm actually trying to complete a project right now. So I'll be posting some of that on your page once I get it done. But I'm several weeks to months away from completing an actual product. But that's what's been keeping me busy now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I have one question that I ask every one of the people who I interview, and that's if money were no object, you had all the resources that you needed to complete your project. You had the time, the availability, everything. What would you work on?
Okay. All right. Well, if you go to my garage shop, you're going to see up at the top is a robotic 3D woman that my wife and I created. And the reason I created it is because she said something along the lines that my tools are my mistress. So that robotic woman is called Tool Addiction because I have a tool addiction. So what I really like to make is a decent sized 3D model of that robotic woman. And if I wanted to get back to my automation, I'd try to make it move a little bit.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and since I'm only about 8 miles with your wife, huh? Yeah, since I'm only about 8 miles from Disney World, and there's a couple of Imagineers living around me, I could probably pull that off. But like you said, money no object, so I don't know about that.
All right, fantastic, folks. We've been talking with Mike Gencarelli, and he's been telling us about some of the cool things he's working on in his website, mygarageshop.com and ngenius.com. I hope that you enjoyed this as much as I've enjoyed talking with Mike and giving you the chance to get to know him a little bit better. I encourage you to check out the stuff that he's working on because it's always amazing and fascinating. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Mike.
No, thank you, Bill. And I amazing. It's just what I like to do. So I've seen some really nice work from a lot of the guys out there. So sometimes I wish I could do as good as they do, but I'm trying anyway.
All right, fantastic. If you would like to hear more episodes like this, please leave a comment to us in this feed. You can leave a rating or a review on iTunes for us, or you can connect with us at the CNC Router Tips group, hashtag CNC Router Tips on Facebook, and we'd love to hear from you. I often mention many different types of software during the episodes, and hardware and cutters, and it can get a little confusing. So what I did was I put together a page on my website, cncroutertips.com/resources. And on that page, I list all sorts of resources there, from books to tools to software all the things that I use that make my CNC experience better and easier. And I hope you'll check it out. So again, it's cncroutertips.com/resources. Now, if you'd like to have your question featured on the air, here's how. Need help? Ask me about your CNC router question on my podcast, the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'll be glad to help or try and get you the help you need. I want this podcast to be a fun and personal experience for everyone and helpful. So let's keep it real and ask sensible questions. Please use common sense and show courtesy to everyone. That way everybody wins. Here are some guidelines to ensure that your question is qualified to be featured on the show. Please keep your questions under 1 minute in length. If it goes a little over that, that's fine, but don't ramble. If you have a website and URL, you're allowed to share it, but only once during the recording. Spammy or disrespectful or deeply private questions will not be considered for the podcast. If you need to ask more than one question, just make each question a separate voicemail. Thank you so much for listening into this episode of the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'm Bill Griggs. Have a great day.